Go! Today is about defending Catholic education. Now, Catholic education in Calgary has a PR problem. And here's three ways that we can position Catholic education as a benefit for everyone. Blessings. I'm Edward C., a millennial digital marketer running for Catholic school trustee in Calgary's Ward 1 and 2 and the beautiful town of Cochrane. Each week leading up to the election, I explain one aspect of my platform live and I answer your most important questions. And last week, we talked about future ready skills and the Alberta K-6 draft curriculum. And this week is about defending Catholic education by explaining how it's a benefit to the 75% in Calgary that are not Catholic. Now, are you skeptical about the need for Catholic education? Are you worried about how Catholic education is portrayed in the media? And do you want your children or grandchildren to thrive in a global workplace? Well, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then this session is perfect for you. Now, before I start, I want to, from the bottom of my heart, say how humbled we were by the overwhelming support for this campaign from the Catholic community. As a new candidate for Catholic trustee, we were overwhelmed by the number of lawn sign requests that we had. We had to go to our printer to get more. And when speaking to Catholics on the campaign trail, a big concern that I hear over and over again is about Catholic education in the news. Yes, this is an important point. Catholic education in the news. You've heard about it. You've seen it quite a bit. Now, if you go to Google News and you search Catholic education Calgary, just those three words, Catholic education Calgary, you'll see many articles that position Catholic education in Calgary in a negative way. So what? So what's the big deal? Well, Catholics, as I said, only make up about 25% of Albertans. So even if every single Catholic voted to keep Catholic education, you'd still lose any vote if the 75% did not see some kind of personal benefit. And that's why I say that we should only publicize the merits of Catholic education that clearly benefit everyone. And so that's exactly why I'd like to explore three ways that I would position Catholic education as a benefit for all as your Catholic trustee. So the three ways are: one, that Catholic Ed sharpens CBE by improving accountability. Number two, a future-ready curriculum requires that we do many small experiments. And three, social justice done by Catholic students. And I'll expand a little bit more on what I mean by that. Okay, so let's jump into it. So the first one that I'm going to talk about today is that Catholic Ed, so I'm going to say Catholic Ed sharpens CBE. And thank you everyone who is joining us live today. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put this in the sharpens CBE. Boom. I want to thank everyone who is joining us live today. I can see a few already who have joined. This is a session about defending Catholic education. And as part of my campaign, I'm going to run a different live stream every single week just about different aspects of Catholic education. And so that's what this one is. So the first one is, how does Catholic education sharpen the public board? How does it benefit the public students? So one complaint about Catholic education in Calgary has been that we're like a slow version of the Calgary Board of Education, or the public board. That is, we make the same decisions only weeks later. So here's just three examples from the news. Number one, CBE renames Langevin School on June 1st, 2021, and then CSSD renames Bishop Grandin High School on June the 28th. So that's 27 days later. So very close to a month. CBE chooses to not pilot the curriculum April 10th, 2021, And then the Calgary Catholic Board decides to not pilot the curriculum April 29th. So that's 19 days later, 3 weeks later. Right? So you see this. This is all in the news. This is what people are. I'm focused on the news because that's public perception. CBE refunds bus fees March 17th, 2021. CSSD changes their bus policy March 24th, 2021. So they're like a little bit more than a week, 2 weeks later. So here's the thing. It is hard to justify the need for Catholic education if it makes the same decisions as CBE, just only slower. So how do we turn this around as a benefit for everyone? Before I begin, can I ask if it's okay that I'm going to be completely honest with you? I have a confession. I have a confession to make. I was born and raised in the Calgary public education system, the CBE. And so I understood the importance of virtue in our world of tech and science. And for that reason, my children are growing up in the Calgary Catholic system. So as a result, I speak to Calgarians who are not in the Catholic system. And my response to them is generally great. I also grew up in CBE schools, or the Calgary Board schools, and I directly benefited from Catholic education during my time in that school. And that's my typical response. So how can that be the case? Well, let me explain. So as your Catholic trustee, I'd position Catholic education as the sword that sharpens CBE. You know, there are times when CBE leads, and there are times when Calgary Catholic leads. And it is this interplay between the two in the media that sparks parents, it holds their trustees accountable, and it delivers a shining education for all. I just give you like four examples of this. First, Calgary Catholic decided that they would only offer online learning as a dedicated school through St. Isidore Online School. Instead of using like the hybrid hub learning, say from CBE, and this school year, guess what? On March the 18th, 2021, CBE also decided to discontinue their hub learning to only offer CBE Learn as a dedicated school. So every public school student benefits when more resources can be put into a dedicated online learning option. That one making sense? Okay. Second, when Calgary Catholic leads in an area, that puts pressure on CBE trustees. For example, the St. Isidore Online School has a full French immersion program that makes it possible to learn in French even if there isn't a school near your home. Now, right now, the CBE Learn school doesn't offer a French immersion program. Calgary Catholic is really applying pressure on CBE through the media, and ultimately, like through the media, to parents and ultimately to CBE trustees to change this, which is great. Like this is new pressure that benefits all students. The third is that Calgary Catholic supports education for neighboring cities like Airdrie and Chestermere, and of course the beautiful town of Cochrane, which I'm running for. Again, this is an opportunity to put pressure on the CBE to also provide support for those towns and communities, just like the Calgary Catholic schools do. Now, finally, on August the 30th, Calgary Catholic announced that they would continue informing families about COVID cases while the CBE, the Calgary Board of Education, will not. So this shows that contact tracing can be done at scale. So it puts more pressure on CBE to advance the health measures that are available to parents. So I hope that makes sense. Those are 4 different examples. In each one of those, sometimes Calgary Catholic leads, sometimes CBE leads. But the fact that you have 2 of them that are constantly one-upping each other, constantly making decisions that appear in the media, that puts pressure. That puts pressure on both to be more accountable. It provides better options for students because they go, yeah, they can do it. How come you guys can't do it? This is wonderful. This is good for our children because it gives them way more options. So there's another aspect to this sharpening of the sword, like that I was talking about, and that is that in March of this year, all you have to do is look at Manitoba, the province of Manitoba. They witnessed parent voices taken away when changes in the Provincial Education Act resulted in appointed instead of elected school board trustees. That is, you don't get a vote anymore as a parent in Manitoba. So this silencing of the parent voice is an unfortunate risk of a super board approach to education. Having multiple boards of trustees, it gives multiple approaches to working with governments to ensure that parents can choose, of course, the learning environment that is going to work best for them, but also that the boards themselves can choose the way that they approach their province for getting the kind of support that they need that's going to be best, most helpful for their children. And so that to me is a really important component, understanding why it is that it is important to have many different voices. You know, one of the things that I will, this is only scratching the surface of parent voice because like parent voice itself is like like I could do like an hour on that easily. But one of the key things is that during the pandemic time, many school councils went from having a fully functional school council to being advisory only, advisory to the principal only, because there just wasn't enough volunteers. And this parent voice is very, very important, especially if we want to have the best options for our kids. And so I do feel that more parent voices, like more boards, more different options, like more voting, actually results in more parent voice. You have more say because there are more options for parents, and that is important. And options, this parent voice and choice is a key aspect of my campaign, and it's a key aspect of just the principle of education in general. And so those are some examples. So I showed 4 examples, and I also showed that last one just about what happens. What happens when it all gets combined? You don't have that sharpening, but also your voice is greatly diminished. And I think this is a growing concern for a lot of parents. It's like, what's going to happen to our voices if everything gets combined? Maybe the politics change and all of a sudden we don't agree with what the province is doing in terms of education. Well, who's going to defend you against that? If you only have one voice, it's very easy to shut that down. But if you have many voices, many different districts, you can resist. You have power. You have more voice. This matters because education needs to have parent voice. We know from numerous studies that the more parent involvement you have, the better quality the education is for kids. This is well known in the OECD PISA information. So that is an important aspect. Now, I want to talk a little bit. You know, last time I was talking about future ready skills. I'm going to jump back a little bit, and if you don't mind, I'm going to talk a little bit about future ready skills. Future ready curriculum. Actually, you know, curriculum. I'm calling it curriculum. Like we need a future-ready curriculum in addition to the skills. And the reason we need that is because there's another threat. So let me get into that. The Ontario lobby group called Urban Neighborhoods produced a report that guessed about 3 to 5% cost savings from merging the Catholic school boards and the public school boards into one unified system. So, how can we argue against the potential economic benefit of a single larger school district? Well, if you look inside this report, and I'll include a link in the chats, the majority of the 3 to 5% savings comes from a category called economy of scale savings. The concept is that if you have one giant district, that pupils, schools, and teacher grants could all be lowered by 3 to 5%. That's where your savings comes from. So that means you would need 3 to 5% less schools, you need 3 to 5% less teachers, and somehow you'd have 3 to 5% less students. This makes no sense. There is no evidence of cost savings from a larger number of employees. In fact, many large corporations today, they treat each division as a separate company. Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they just merge all the decision making under one boss or one decision making board? Since that's way more efficient. It's because the supposed cost savings are lost when you make broad decisions that negatively impact one group while benefiting another. That's the problem with decisions. So efficiency exists in these small and medium enterprises. It is much harder in a large enterprise to achieve a really high level of efficiency. And as your Catholic trustee, I would position Catholic education as a resource to experiment and find the best way to teach future ready skills. Our world is changing, and our children need skills that won't be automated, outsourced, or digitized. Both The Lean Startup by Eric Ries and Zero to One by Peter Thiel, the Palantir, one of the founders of eBay, speak to the importance of lowering the cost of the value hypothesis experiments. So for example, let's just pretend like in a startup, before you have your first business, before you have a business, before you have your first sale, you don't even have a business. What you have is a value hypothesis. And that value hypothesis needs to be tested, right? Like, how would we know that this is actually beneficial? And in the same way, we need to do this kind of lean, agile type of testing inside education as well. And so, what I've learned, and this is from experience working in industry, is that the larger the organization, the more expensive every single value hypothesis experiment becomes, because more process, of course, is required, but also like it's going to impact a lot more people. So you have to that you need a lot more checks and balances in place as organizations become larger. So I want to expand on what I mean by this, because this is something that I'm really passionate about, because in my field it's all about doing especially in education and technology, it's about doing these small experiments. And we know that education is changing. I've talked about this before, that we need future ready skills. We need to teach future ready skills. How do we do that? What is the right approach? Like, it doesn't seem like there's a foolproof, tested, and known formula for teaching creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, communication skills, citizenship, and character. Those are things that educators are experimenting with right now. There are so many different approaches, and we don't know what is the best approach for Calgary. What is the best experiment that is going to work for all students in Alberta? And what we need are a lot of smaller experiments. So having the separate boards means that those experiments get done. and that those best practices can be shared and they can also be acted on, which is very important. And so this is an area that I love a lot. I'm very passionate about, because when it comes to those lean experiments, it's got to be small. It's got to be like it's got to be something you can just try. And you don't have to go and involve everyone. Like, that's not the right way to do it. Like, the way to do it is obviously to find these smaller best practices. I remember working with the Toronto District School Board, and you could find, like, people talk about discovery education. Well, I found some schools that did that, and I was like, wow, this is an incredible process. But you really need a teacher, a very capable teacher who is very comfortable with chaos, because it is not easy to do, right? Like, they ask questions. There's a lot of, like, people are trying to discover their questions along as they go. And it was this kind of realization that, sometimes, like, the content, like, you need better content. Oh, okay, we need to improve this. So all of these questions leads into answers that other school districts can take. They can build on the shoulders of giants here in order to help each other. And that's where this, like, the sharpening of the sword really helps. It is in that communication between the two districts that we get the best education for every student in Calgary. Now, I hope that makes sense. Now, if there's any questions that you have about this, please feel free to pop it into the chat. I do really appreciate everyone who is participating in the chat. It's good to have that interaction and have those questions. So, of course, we are live. Sometimes people are like, "Are you actually live?" I'm like, "Yes, I am actually live." So, any questions? Feel free to ping. Let me know. Okay. For some reason, Facebook is not allowing. Connection is in error state. Okay. Let me just double check to see. But I think for the most part, I'm just going to continue on, because we'll have a recording. Don't you worry. And I can make that available to the Facebook side. So no worries. Okay, cool. So here we go. The last aspect that I want to talk about, and this is something that is also very near and dear to my heart, is about social justice. And I don't think we talk about this topic enough in education in general, but this is important. This is important. That's why I'm mentioning it. So to start, let's start with that bad news. Many of you already know about the news reports of the Calgary Catholic and the Black Lives Matters movement. If you're not already familiar, here's like just a refresher of the news headlines. This is what they wrote. October 1st, 2020, students suspended over recording Calgary Catholic school principal using the N-word. And then a week later, October 8th, 2020, Calgary Catholic students walk out of class to protest systemic racism in the education system. Haha. Now, the official response that Calgary Catholic had was that it doesn't tolerate racism. But for a lot of people, that didn't resonate with the actions that were taken as a result. I think they were expecting, like, somebody to get fired. And this is a tricky situation, I will fully admit. How could Calgary Catholic position this issue differently without throwing its own staff and, of course, its own training and its own system under the bus? How would they do that? How would they do that? Any ideas? Well, Pope Francis has said that human rights are not only violated by terrorism, repression, or assassination, but also by unfair economic structures that create huge inequalities. And as your Catholic trustee, I would have said that I'm proud that Calgary Catholic produces students with the moral values to see wrongdoing, the passion to motivate their peers, and the resolve to engage in non-violent resistance. It shows that we're raising children who are not afraid of speaking truth to power. Children who are not afraid of speaking truth to power. Because the truth is that racism exists in every large organization. Some might be, like, in this situation, yeah, some might be appeased if we made examples of those who didn't follow every policy to the letter. But if we follow the lead of Jesus, we find that, like I said last week, he's quite chill about the prostitute and the adulterer because they made decisions within the context of a society that is deeply unfair and an economic and gendered system that didn't give equal economic opportunity to women. Now, on the other hand, Jesus had no chill, zero chill for systems that created these unfair structures that led to poverty for many. And that's actually my why for being in education. To create a generation of leaders who will see the unfair and unjust systems that exist in our world and change them. This drives all my work in education. It's why I created AI parenting, to teach our children about the unfair and unjust systems of artificial intelligence so that they can fight back and hack their AI boss. It's why I'm running for Catholic trustee, to see a generation of Catholics who recognize and bravely stand against injustice in our world. So this is my why. It's what I do, right? I keep forgetting to add that to the live stream. You should also check out Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. In it, oh, what are we talking about? Are Jewish people correct? Oh, Joseph. Hi, Joseph. Okay, so let me take a pause. Okay, so hi, Joseph. Hi, Joseph. I'm not sure what you mean by are Jewish people correct. Like in what aspect? I think there's a lot of things that they're correct in. Like for example, I'll give you an example. Like for example, I have done some recordings, video recordings with the tech rabbi, and he's really incredible because he brings his faith into education in a very special way, and he feels that like we're all creators, like we should all learn to create. So he has a very great approach to creation in education, and I love that. So if you don't know him, the tech rabbi, I think you would definitely see that a lot of the things that he says is absolutely correct. One of the things that I love from him was this notion of a tech sabbat, which is it's just a day off from tech. So every single week there is one day, no devices, no iPhones, no nothing. They take a sabbatical, they take time off, they take a Sabbath for tech. How cool is that, right? Like I agree with that 100%. I think that we do need some breaks. We need time that we can reflect. Excuse me, is it deliberately spelled education lol? Did I spell it correctly? I don't even remember saying education. Oh, you mean the live stream is maybe the live stream is incorrectly described. And if that's the case, sorry, my fault. Okay, so let's go back. Yeah, oh, that's weird. Okay, anyways, so let's go back. Um, I think that it is this standing against the injustice in our world. Oh, and by the way, like if I spelled education wrong, hey, I'm sorry. I am not perfect, right? If you're looking for a perfect individual, like especially for trustee, you're definitely looking in the wrong direction. I don't think you'll find any candidate would make that claim that they are perfect. People make mistakes. I think that the key is when I see mistakes, because they're normal, they happen in our industry, they happen everywhere. What happens afterwards? What kind of restorative measures do we use for that? I think sometimes, we don't apologize. Sometimes we let our pride get in the way. And I think that that is often a big, big barrier for us connecting with people, having reconciliation. It is our pride that becomes a wall between us and the people who need to be reconciled. And I think I will certainly expand upon this specific topic of reconciliation a lot more. So I thank you for your question, MC, because that's a very very important one. Is why, right? Like if we made a mistake, own up to it, right? We don't need our egos to be in the way. We don't need to be perceived as perfect. In fact, like this is the big issue. I think this is the big issue for a long time with Instagram. It's just it seems so fake. Everybody who was on there was showing like this perfectly curated aspect of their life. It wasn't actually their life, right? Their life could be terrible. Who knows, right? They're not actually like as happy as they look on those images. It was all fake representations of themselves, or maybe it wasn't fake, but maybe it was just like a very narrow slice of their actual lives. And I think that nowadays on the internet, we're getting to a point where people are saying way more that they want authenticity. It is our flaws, it is our mistakes, it is the things that are not right that allow us to connect with other people. We connect through struggle. We connect through like the things that we are not right at. I make selling mistakes all the time. It's interesting, like you mentioned that because I'll in the diversity and inclusion one, I also talk a little bit more about special education because, like, as a special education parent, I'll expand a little bit more about my own struggles with ADHD, like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and dyslexia. I'm learning a lot about this stuff, partly because this is the lived experience that I have with education. It's one of the reasons why I'm really passionate. So yes, MC is saying true, true. We all make mistakes. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah. So you know, I I love that. And I think that the key is, I'm. This is one of the reasons why I want to be soft on people. I don't want to go and like my approach to education, to politics, to everything is perhaps very different than what you might read on Twitter. There are certainly a lot of people who are directly criticizing our premier, or they're saying it's because of our education minister that things are really terrible. But I do not blame those individuals. I blame the systems that exist. And my goal is never to like you can't fix the person, right? But you can fix the systems. And if we tend to focus on those systems, I feel that it is there that we actually show a Catholic approach to education, a approach that very closely mimics the life of Jesus. Right? He's seeing people that made bad mistakes, sure, but he's not going out and saying like, "Oh, that person," like just flaming them on Twitter. It doesn't help. Maybe it makes us feel better, right? It could. I could totally see that. Like, putting somebody else down makes us feel great. but it doesn't fix the systems. It doesn't fix the systems. We need to fix the systems. Because no matter who is in charge and no matter what politics there are of the day, our kids are still going to grow up into a very different world than we grew up in. Over a half of Gen Z workers, they're freelancing on AI platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and Hubstaff. What does it mean when your boss is an AI? It's not a person. This is the challenge of our day. Things are going to be very difficult because what's the cost of outsourcing in those environments? Like you can, sure, you can, like if you're on, let's say Fiverr, right? Like the cost of outsourcing is zero, right? So what's the difference between like hiring somebody here locally in Calgary versus hiring, like it's just if they get the job done, they have good ratings, then great. I was just talking to a friend, like a close family member, about like getting a job, and I told him, understand how AI works. This is going to help you get a job. All I told him is go look at Fiverr, right? Look at the top people when you search for your particular skill set. Like his was project management. Search for project managers on Fiverr, on Hubstaff, on Upwork, and look at what people say. What do people really appreciate about this person? Yes, there's going to be in the requirements, they're going to say, like, I need to see blah, blah, blah keywords. Like nowadays, most resumes are not actually reviewed by a human. They are reviewed by computers and AI and search algorithms. So, do you have the keywords? Make sure those keywords are in your resume. Sorry, SEO optimization of resumes is a real thing. You don't understand the AI system, you're going to be at a huge, huge disadvantage compared to somebody who does know the AI system. And you want to game the Fiverr algorithm? Fairly easy. You and your buddies, right? Just go and buy these like cheap $5 gigs off of each other. Buy like, I think you only need 5 gigs, that you've completed, done in a fairly timely manner to become a level 1 seller. Great. Because when I see that, I'm like, oh, he's on Fiverr, he's a level 1 seller. He's going to do great work. Yes, he will. Right? Because like this is how the recommendation engine works. That's all they have to work with. And so I think that if you understand AI, you understand these systems, you're going to have a big, big advantage. And I would hate for our children to grow up and not know this stuff. My children, that's fine. They'll know this stuff. Don't worry. Their dad's going to take care of them. But I do think that we're going to have a hard time fighting back, like taking back control and fighting injustice if we don't have a good understanding of how much AI impacts our lives. I often say, like, yes, we focus a lot on programming, but no, no, AI affects a lot more of your life, of your day to day. Like every search that you do, every news article you see, every like feed that you browse was all determined by an AI. There was never a human being involved in the loop. That's what they're trying to avoid. This is part of the automation. So what does that mean when that's affecting everything that's going through your head all the time? How is that affecting you? And I think that that's one of the key things that we need in order to thrive, especially for our kids in the future. And I've told like others, like as a millennial, I have a job. Like I don't need to go and do all this like AI parenting and figuring out all of this online stuff. But I think it's important. I don't need to be on social media. Like I could just work and retire and it'd be fine. But I do this because our kids will, right? This is the lived reality for our children today. And when we get to that point, when they get to the point, I want to say that I've done it, right? I can guide you because I've done this before. And I think that that's really important for us to not only look at like how we got raised and the kind of world that we lived in, because theirs is very different, right? They didn't we say, like, for myself, like, we grew up in a time where there wasn't devices around all the time. There wasn't in like, different types of media that was all tailored to you. Watching TV shows was boring. You wanted to go outside and do other things and hang out with people. And so things are changing. Things are changing. And so I think to best prepare us, that's one of the reasons why I think we need just more ideas, more thoughts. This kind of sword sharpening each other, putting more ideas is going to sharpen that sword a lot more. It's gonna make it, like, education much more productive, because we're constantly, like, being compared in the media. This is great. I feel like use that to improve education across Alberta, especially across Calgary, and then it'll be very clear exactly how this benefits everyone. So thank you again, MC, and thank you, Joseph, again for I appreciate the comments, no matter what they are. So the last part, and this isn't like a separate thing. It's called join the movement. So I'm going to add that, join the movement at edwardc.com. Okay. So honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for investing in the future of Catholic education in today's live stream. We both know that there's a lot of injustice in our world, and that's exactly why Catholic education is a benefit to all Calgarians. If you believe that systems of injustice need to be changed, go and visit my site, edwardc.com, edwardtse.com. There you'll see my platform. You can sign up to donate, and you can get your own lawn sign delivered to your home if you live in Calgary. This is a campaign where I didn't know. I had no idea, like, starting out, what the response would be. But what I'm hearing, and I'm getting a lot of support for, is that people want change. They see that society's changing. We're going to have to change education in the same way. And so go and check out the site. For those who are joining on the Amazon live stream, I put some of the books that I mentioned inside the Amazon live stream, so you can see 0 to 1, the Lean Startup, and then I put a couple of the books from Pope Francis. I love his approach, because it very closely aligns with my same thinking from the perspective of education. Is that we're here for what reason? We're here to fight against these systems of injustice. And so the more that we can raise children who recognize this, and then they have the bravery, they're not afraid to fight back, you're doing something right. And I think we need to not see it as a bad thing. Oh, it's seen in a bad light. We have a PR problem, but the work that's being done is wonderful. We just need to talk about it in a different way. And this is something that I see is, a lot of times the issue is not the product. The product itself is great, but the messaging needs work. That's okay. We can fix that. We can fix the messaging. That's what I love to do. I love, like, looking at the messaging, looking at what are ways that we can position it as a benefit for all. And I speak from the perspective of somebody who hasn't spent their whole life in the system. So I know when it is a benefit for everyone, because I fell into that category too. And so sometimes I will say the things that we talk about, they are benefits. We just need to talk about them, position them differently. And no matter which system we are in, competition is good. Competition is what makes it's interesting. It's what makes Canada's education so competitive. You think, oh, it's because of something that happens in Toronto. No, like Canada is one of the few countries on earth that does not have a federal minister of education. One minister to deal with all of education across Alberta. Our strength comes from every single province has its own minister of education to tailor the education specifically to the people that live in your region. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this? Like in one scenario where perhaps somebody in Ottawa made decisions about education for your children, right? Like they might live in a totally different context than we do right here in Calgary. What if there was like one super board for the entirety of Canada's education? There was one opportunity. That was it. It was like a political position. Like you would hire somebody. That would be really tough. Like maybe we think we're not being heard right now. Just imagine. Just imagine how difficult it would be to hear the voices of Calgarians if we had just one board for all of Canada. So huge difference, and that is the strength of Canada's education. It's the reason why we can do all these experiments. We can try things. We can find out, do they work? Do they not work? This is what makes education strong for everyone, not just those who are in the Catholic system. So whenever somebody says, "Oh, I'm not in the Catholic system," great. Neither was I. But I benefited from Catholic education, and here's why. So, before I close up today, I want to also thank Father Jonathan from the St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church here in Calgary, still in the Silver Springs area. I had a chance to meet with him prior to doing this, just to double check the points, right? Like to go, okay, am I even on the right track here? And the message that I got was, yeah, like he sees things, of course, from faith perspective. He feels like one of the great strengths of Catholic education is you can talk about your faith. And I agree. Like, I think that being able to speak to your faith is very important. In fact, it's one of the real strengths in Finland, for example, their education system. Many of the people who go to Finnish schools go to the same churches. They have the same religious background. So that piece of context is something that can be used and woven into how they are taught. And that common ground makes it a lot easier to teach. And so you could imagine for other faiths, it's the same way, right? So if there are schools that cover a particular faith, this is a good model. There's a good model, an example of how that can benefit a larger number of people, but still support a diverse number of religions. And that's the way I saw it. I love what he was saying. I also recognize that we need to talk about it from the position of a benefit for the 75%. The 75% that are not part of the Catholic system. Maybe they go to the Calgary Board of Education. Maybe they go to a different church. Great. You benefit as well. Here's how. That's a different messaging. That's a very different messaging than, oh, we're going to defend it because we have a constitutional right. Constitutions can be changed. Rights can be taken away. We've seen it. We've seen it happen in Manitoba. We've seen it happen around the world. And so we need to talk about working together. In the end, we all Calgarians, we all live in this same region. And whether or not we succeed or whether or not we fail, is going to depend on how well we can work together, that we can help each other. If we keep it from the position of, oh, we're great, you're not, then we are creating a system of inequality. And if we really see it from the perspective of, it's not okay for you to be great and then everyone, like for others to really suffer. We can't stand for that. If you believe this philosophy that there are worse things, like terrorism is bad, but you know what also is bad is like these systems that hurt people. If you think from a system perspective, you can change the system. And if you can change the system, you can benefit everyone. You can benefit education as a whole. And so I love that. I am super thankful for every one of you. And I'd encourage you, join the movement. Go visit edwardc.com. And we will see you next week. And next week, my plan is to cover another aspect of my platform, which I feel very passionate about as well. And that's reconciliation. I think that we need to have some hard conversations about what does truth and reconciliation mean in our society. And like I said, like every single one of these topics, for me, like spending an hour talking about them is easy. Like I've been in education for such a long time, but I also have like very different perspectives on it. There's a lot that I want to share. There's a lot that I want you to be aware of, because I think that this is important for your choice for Catholic trustee. You want to make sure that the candidates that you choose are well informed on the issues. And I know that there's like some debates coming up with the ATA, the Alberta Teachers Association. I think they're going to just bring people forward for the platform. But you might want to hear more. You might want to learn a little bit more about the different perspectives and ask, like, does this person have the depth that I need to represent me as a Catholic trustee? And that's really what I am trying to do with these live streams. So eventually I'll take them and I'll split them into little smaller videos. So if you follow me on Facebook, or if you follow me on any of the social media platforms like Twitter, you'll see them there too. And of course, like this week, you're probably going to see a lot more lawn signs come up. A lot of my lawn signs. Finally getting some teams to help. Like what we've learned about lawn signs is, yeah, oh man, like I knew nothing of this. Like when I started the campaign, is that lawn signs are not easy. Like first, yeah, of course you need permission, but then like how do you set things up? How do you apparently like putting a twist tie on them so that it doesn't like blow off with the wind, and what are the rules? Like there's all sorts of things involved. And so I'm very, very thankful to those who volunteered their homes and those who volunteered their time to be part of the teams to put up the lawn signs, because it's not easy. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it, right? People deserve to know. They deserve to have choices. I'll maybe talk a little bit more about like my approach to social media, the kinds of messages that I'm trying to get out there, because I feel that no matter what happens, these messages are important ones to get out. It doesn't hurt, whether or not I get elected. They're still important messages that can benefit. They can benefit Catholic education. They can benefit everyone. And so I just wanted to get the message out that like there are other ideas, there are other thoughts as to ways that we can support Catholic education. And so with that, I started this a little bit late, so I will end a little bit earlier. Thank you very much. Blessings. We appreciate you investing the time, the effort to listen today. And we're looking forward to seeing you next week when we talk a little bit more about reconciliation. Thank you. Goodbye.